London, 19th century. The heart of the British Empire was not just a beacon of power, but also a city suffocating under its own grime. Thick coal smoke darkened the skies. Industrial soot coated every surface, and the once pristine River Thames. It had become a swirling mass of human and industrial waste. Open sewers snaked through the streets, emitting noxious fumes, while horse manure piled up at an alarming rate. Estimates suggested that London streets were covered in thousands of tons of waste at any given time. The stench was unbearable, a permanent fixture of daily life. But the most horrifying part? It wasn't what could be seen, it was the daily hygiene habits of the people. For many, washing was a rare luxury, and the concept of germ theory was still decades away from mainstream acceptance. The combination of poor sanitation, limited access to clean water, and overcrowded living conditions created a breeding ground for disease, fueling deadly outbreaks of cholera, typhoid, and tuberculosis. Personal cleanliness wasn't just a matter of health, it was a marker of social class. The wealthy lived in grand homes, with copper bathtubs and scented towels, often attended by servants who fetched hot water for their indulgent bathing rituals. Meanwhile, the working poor crammed into overcrowded tenements where a single water pump might serve an entire street. For them, staying clean was a constant struggle, with many forced to wash in murky communal basins or rely on public bathhouses that charged a fee. Hygiene was not a right, it was a privilege. Charles Dickens, in Oliver Twist, vividly described London's slums as a labyrinth of filth, where men and women already poor and desperate are buried in refuse and disease. The divide between rich and poor was not only economic, but also visible in every aspect of daily hygiene. Survival in this era wasn't just about making a living, it was about avoiding illness. For the working poor, staying clean was a daily battle, a fight against both poverty and the city's filth. Water was scarce, and for many the idea of taking a daily bath, pure fantasy. In London's overcrowded tenements, entire families shared a single cold water tap, if they were lucky enough to have running water at all. More often, they fetched water from public pumps, sometimes walking blocks just to fill a single bucket, and even then, there was no guarantee that the water was safe. Public bathhouses introduced in the 1840s offered some relief, but at a cost. A cold bath, 1 penny, a hot bath, 2 pence. For many families struggling to survive, even that was too much. Instead, they relied on the infamous Saturday night bath. 1 tub, 1 family. Each member taking turns, starting with the father, then the mother, and finally, the children. By the time the youngest got in, the water was so murky that losing a baby in it didn't seem all that impossible. That's how the phrase, "don't throw the baby out with the bathwater," was born. Laundry, another ordeal. Without easy access to clean water, many working-class families washed clothes sporadically. Women scrubbed garments by hand, using harsh, homemade soaps that burned the skin. Meanwhile, the wealthy, they had servants to do the dirty work, quite literally. As Victorian writer Isabella Beeton observed, "A poor man must labor to keep clean, while a rich man's cleanliness is simply arranged for him." Even for those who bathed, the soap they used was another matter entirely. Early Victorian soap was a harsh mixture of animal fat and lye, strong enough to strip dirt, and several layers of skin along with it. The process of making soap, labor-intensive and often done at home. It required caustic soda and animal byproducts, a dangerous combination that could cause severe burns if handled improperly. The resulting soap? It had an unpleasant odor and left skin rough and dry. For many working-class families, purchasing soap was an unaffordable luxury due to high taxation on soap products. It wasn't until Prime Minister William Gladstone removed the soap tax in 1853 that it became more widely accessible. However, even after the repeal, cheap, low-quality soap remained common among the lower classes, while the wealthy could afford finer, scented soaps, imported from France or made with natural oils. A major breakthrough came in the 1860s when Andrew Pears introduced transparent, gentler soap that didn't damage the skin. Marketed with glamorous advertisements featuring cherubic children and elegant ladies, Pears soap became a status symbol among the middle and upper classes. These advertisements, some of the earliest examples of modern marketing, emphasized beauty, refinement, and even moral superiority. Cleanliness? It wasn't just a necessity, it was a mark of character. Meanwhile, those who couldn't afford commercial soap relied on homemade alternatives. Vinegar rinses, oatmeal scrubs, and even wood ash were commonly used as substitutes. Some families would boil leftover animal fat with lye to produce crude homemade soap, a dangerous process that could cause severe chemical burns if not done correctly. The industrial boom of the late 19th century saw the rise of large-scale soap production. Companies like Lever Brothers introduced Sunlight soap in the 1880s, one of the first soaps marketed as an essential household item for both cleanliness and social respectability. By the end of the Victorian era, soap had become an everyday necessity. Personal hygiene? It was no longer seen as a luxury reserved for the elite, but as a fundamental part of modern life. If people couldn't bathe regularly, they at least tried to keep up appearances through their clothing. In Victorian society, outward cleanliness was a key indicator of respectability. Men from the middle and upper classes wore detachable collars and cuffs, which could be cleaned separately without washing the entire shirt. This allowed clerks and businessmen to maintain a well-groomed appearance, despite rarely laundering their garments. Women? They faced greater challenges. Victorian dresses were elaborate, heavy, and often made from delicate fabrics that couldn't be washed frequently. Instead, they relied on multiple layers of undergarments, such as chemises and petticoats, which absorbed sweat and dirt. This allowed the outer garments to remain clean for longer periods. These undergarments were changed regularly and washed with homemade soaps, while dresses were merely aired out and spot-cleaned. The idea that cleanliness equated to morality became deeply ingrained in Victorian culture. Florence Nightingale, in Notes on Nursing, 1859, emphasized that cleanliness is not only a part of health, but of virtue. Even the phrase, airing one's dirty laundry, came from this period, referring to both the literal practice of hanging clothes to air out, and the metaphorical act of exposing private matters in public. Even within the working class, there was pressure to maintain an appearance of cleanliness. Laundresses and washerwomen played a crucial role, offering affordable cleaning services for those who could spare a few pennies. However, with limited access to clean water, many struggled to maintain their clothing, leading to a clear visual distinction between the classes. By 1858, London faced an environmental catastrophe. The River Thames, the city's main water source, had become a cesspool of human waste, rotting carcasses, and industrial pollution. That summer, temperatures soared, causing an unbearable stench to rise from the river. The smell was so overwhelming that Parliament had to shut its doors because politicians couldn't endure it. This disaster forced the government into action. The brilliant engineer Joseph Bazalgette was tasked with designing London's first modern sewer system, an underground network stretching over 80 miles, diverting waste away from the city. His massive project was expensive, but it would save thousands of lives. Reformer Edwin Chadwick famously observed, "The loss of life due to filth and poor ventilation exceeds that from any war Britain has fought in modern times." His words underscored the deadly cost of poor sanitation. Before scientific breakthroughs, people believed diseases spread through miasma, poisonous air from rotting waste. But Dr. John Snow proved otherwise. Investigating London's cholera outbreaks, he traced the source to contaminated water, not the air. His discovery challenged prevailing medical beliefs and laid the foundation for modern epidemiology. Meanwhile, Florence Nightingale played a crucial role. In her 1859 book Notes on Nursing, she emphasized the importance of hygiene, stating, "The very first requirement in a hospital is that it should do no harm." At the same time, Joseph Lister, inspired by Louis Pasteur's work on bacteria, introduced antiseptic surgery. By using carbolic acid to disinfect wounds, tools, and hands, he dramatically reduced post-operative infections. These pioneers reshaped medicine and public health forever. By the late 19th century, a hygiene revolution was underway. Indoor plumbing became more common, flushing toilets became standard, and soap manufacturers capitalized on the growing demand for personal cleanliness. Thomas Crapper, often mistakenly credited with inventing the toilet, actually popularized and improved it, making the flushing system more efficient. Public bathhouses expanded, allowing the working class greater access to cleanliness. But it wasn't just about improvements. Advertising played a massive role. Soap brands, toothpaste manufacturers, and even shampoo companies flooded newspapers and magazines with messages that linked hygiene to social status and respectability. Cleanliness was no longer just a virtue, it was an expectation. From streets piled with refuse to towering advancements in sanitation, the Victorian era witnessed a transformation in hygiene that shaped the modern world. Innovations in clean water, medical sterilization, and personal grooming didn't just improve lives, they laid the foundation for modern public health. Louis Pasteur once said, "Illness comes from germs, not curses or foul air." This shift in understanding saved millions of lives and propelled society into a new era of health and hygiene. But what do you think about these changes? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more fascinating historical stories.